The studio lights burned bright, cameras rolling, the crowd expecting sparks. They didn't have to wait. Denzel leaned forward, his voice like a blade slicing the air. "Trump, let's stop pretending. You're not a leader, you're a traitor, and America deserves better." The audience gasped, some clapping, others frozen. Trump stiffened, his trademark smirk replaced by something darker. He pointed across the stage, his voice booming, "How dare you call me that? I built this country back stronger than ever." Denzel's eyes narrowed. "Built? You built chaos, lies, and division. You didn't strengthen America, you sold it off, piece by piece, to line your pockets." The energy in the room surged. Viewers at home were glued to their screens, the kind of moment that goes viral before the commercial break. Trump leaned toward his microphone, jabbing a finger at Denzel. "You're just another Hollywood elitist, living in fantasy land. People like you don't understand real Americans." Denzel didn't flinch. His calm was more lethal than shouting. "I know real Americans," he said, voice rising just enough to cut through the noise. "They're the workers who can't afford healthcare while you brag about tax cuts for billionaires. They're the families you promised to save but left in the dust. And every time you claim to fight for them, you betray them again." The crowd erupted. Half applauded, half jeered, but no one could deny the electricity. Trump slammed his hand on the desk. "You don't talk to me that way." Denzel leaned in, sharper now, "Then act like a president and not a conman. Because America isn't your brand, it's a country, and you've treated it like a cheap deal to flip." The moderator tried to interject, but the audience roared too loud. The battle lines were drawn. Trump's face turned crimson under the harsh studio lights, his jaw tight as if he was holding back an explosion. He finally let it out. "You think you can sit there and lecture me about America? I gave this country 4 years of strength. You, Denzel, what have you done? Make movies? Win awards?" The crowd booed at the cheap shot, some even shouting, "Answer him, Denzel." But Denzel didn't blink. He adjusted his mic slowly, his stare locked like steel. "Movies don't bankrupt families. Movies don't separate children from their parents at the border. Movies don't mock veterans or cheat contractors out of millions. That was you, Donald. That was all you." The audience broke into applause, a wave of claps echoing through the studio. Trump slammed his fist on the podium. "Fake news garbage. All of it. You're parroting lies the media feeds you." Denzel shot back instantly. "The media didn't make you cheat the builders who worked on your casinos. The media didn't make you call soldiers suckers and losers. And the media didn't make you stand by while hate groups marched and claimed you as their hero. Those were your choices, your betrayals. That's why I called you a traitor." The room went electric. Gasps, shouts, even laughter filled the air. Trump tried to fire back, his voice cracking with frustration. "I did more for America than anyone since Lincoln." The audience chuckled, some booing at the absurd claim. Denzel leaned forward again, his words slow, deliberate, aimed like bullets. "Lincoln freed people. You trapped them. Lincoln united. You divided. Lincoln lifted America higher. You dragged her down for your own ego." A silence fell so heavy you could hear the hum of the cameras. Then the eruption, the audience leapt to their feet, applause drowning out Trump's protests. The moderator raised a hand to calm the chaos, but the fire was lit. Social media was already clipping the exchange, hashtags exploding, hashtag Denzel versus Trump, hashtag traitor-in-chief. This wasn't a debate anymore, it was an indictment, and Trump was on trial in front of the nation. Trump's breathing grew heavier, his fists clenching and unclenching on the podium. "You're nothing but an actor," he barked, his voice echoing with fury. "You don't know sacrifice, you don't know leadership, and you sure as hell don't know what it takes to sit in the Oval Office." The insult was sharp, but Denzel didn't even blink. He raised an eyebrow, tilting his head slightly, almost amused. "You're right, Donald," he said coolly. "I'm not an actor pretending to be president. I'm a man who speaks the truth. And the truth is, you betrayed this country at every turn, for profit, for power, for pride. The crowd gasped, some clapping, others shouting. Trump leaned forward, veins visible on his neck, his voice cracking as he roared, "I made America strong again." Denzel cut him off with a thunderous voice, "No, you made America a circus." Every scandal, every tweet, every lie turned the White House into a joke. You didn't give America strength, you gave her shame. The audience erupted into cheers, the sound rattling the studio. Cameras zoomed in on Trump's trembling hand gripping the microphone, his knuckles white. Trying to regain control, Trump jabbed a finger toward Denzel. "You're disrespecting millions who voted for me," he spat. Denzel fired back instantly, "No, I'm respecting the millions who regret it. The millions who lost jobs when your promises collapsed. The millions who buried loved ones during a pandemic you downplayed. You didn't protect them, Donald. You abandoned them." The studio felt like it was shaking. Even the moderator sat frozen, unsure if he should step in. Trump tried to interject again, his voice strained, "You don't understand the pressure of being president." Denzel's reply came like a hammer, "Then you should never have taken the job. The role of president is about serving America. You only ever served yourself." The audience exploded once more, chants of "Denzel. Denzel," echoing through the studio. Social media feeds lit up with clips and quotes. Hashtags like #TruthHurts and #TrumpExposed began trending within minutes. This wasn't just a heated debate anymore, it was a reckoning, and Trump was losing the room. Trump leaned back, his face red as he forced a bitter laugh. "You think words make you powerful? You're just playing to the crowd, Denzel. Without Hollywood behind you, you're nothing." The insult hung in the air, sharp and personal. But Denzel leaned forward, his voice calm yet piercing, "No, Donald. Words don't make me powerful. Truth does. And it's the one thing you've never been able to handle." The crowd roared, clapping and shouting in agreement. Trump slammed his hand on the podium again, his voice cracking, "Fake. All of it. Lies. I built this country's economy." But Denzel's eyes narrowed. He spoke slowly, letting each word slice through the noise. "You didn't build it. You borrowed it. You robbed it. You hollowed it out for your own gain. The workers you cheated, the contractors you stiffed, the families left in ruins, that was your empire. That was your America." The studio went silent, the weight of the accusation pressing down on everyone present. Trump tried to push back, his tone rising to a desperate pitch, "That's business. That's how it works." Denzel's reply was swift and merciless, "No, Donald, that's betrayal. Business builds. Betrayal destroys. And you've been destroying America piece by piece." The audience erupted again, this time standing on their feet, clapping and chanting. Trump's face twisted with frustration, his eyes darting between the cameras and the hostile crowd. He pointed a trembling finger at Denzel. "You're dividing the country," he shouted. Denzel didn't flinch. The country was already divided. "You just poured gasoline on the fire and called it leadership." At that moment, the moderator attempted to cut in, his voice shaky, "Gentlemen, let's," but his words were drowned by the deafening crowd. Hashtags like #Denzel versus Trump and #TruthOverLies lit up screens across America. Viewers at home leaned closer, glued to the spectacle. What started as a debate had morphed into a national moment, one man confronting another with truths too heavy to dodge. Trump straightened his tie, trying to regain composure. "You talk like you know me," he sneered. "But you don't know what it's like to be in the arena, to take the punches, to fight every day for this country." His voice carried a forced strength, but his eyes betrayed something else, desperation. Denzel leaned forward, his gaze steady, and delivered his words like a hammer. "You weren't fighting for the country, Donald. You were fighting for yourself. Every decision you made was a gamble to protect your image, your wealth, your fragile ego." The audience broke into applause, the sound crashing through the studio like a wave. Trump raised his hand, shouting above the noise, "I gave America jobs. I gave America pride." Denzel cut in sharply, his tone slicing like steel, "You gave America scandals. You gave America lies. You gave America division. The only pride you delivered was your own." Gasps filled the room, and cameras zoomed in on Trump's reddened face. He tried to interrupt, but Denzel kept going, his voice rising with conviction. "Real leaders don't cheat the people who trust them. Real leaders don't leave the country weaker than they found it. And real leaders don't treat the presidency like a business deal. You, Donald, are not a leader. You are a disaster wrapped in arrogance." The crowd erupted in chants again, some shouting, "Truth," while others roared, "Denzel." The moderator tried to wave his hands, but the noise was unstoppable. Trump pounded the podium, his voice trembling, "This is unfair. You're twisting everything." Denzel shook his head. "The truth doesn't twist. It stares you in the face. And tonight, America sees you for what you are, a man who failed her." Social media lit up instantly. Clips of Denzel's words spread like wildfire. Memes, quotes, and hashtags surged. Hashtag Trump disaster, hashtag truth wins, hashtag Denzel exposed him. Commentators across networks already predicted this moment would dominate headlines for weeks. In that studio, history wasn't just being argued, it was being carved. The tension in the studio was unbearable. Trump gripped the podium so tightly his knuckles turned white. "You think you're some kind of savior?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "You're an actor, Denzel. Stick to your scripts and your cameras. Leave running the country to men who actually understand power." His words, dripping with arrogance, hung heavy in the air. Denzel didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned closer to the microphone, his voice calm but laced with steel. "Power, Donald? You confuse power with privilege. Power is meant to serve. Privilege is meant to exploit. And you've lived your whole life mistaking one for the other." The audience burst into cheers, some people rising to their feet in applause. Trump tried to cut him off, waving his hands angrily. "Wrong. Totally wrong. I gave America strength." But Denzel pressed forward, his words relentless. "Strength isn't built on cheating contractors out of millions. Strength isn't mocking veterans or turning allies into enemies. Strength isn't standing behind podiums and shouting lies until people are too exhausted to fight back. That's not strength, Donald. That's weakness masquerading as power." The moderator shifted uncomfortably, clearly losing control of the stage. Cameras zoomed in on Denzel's face, steady and fierce, then on Trump, his jaw clenched, sweat forming on his forehead. The contrast was stark, one man radiating composure, the other unraveling before the nation's eyes. "You call yourself a leader," Denzel continued, raising his voice above the crowd, "but a leader doesn't divide his people. A leader doesn't treat the presidency like a stage for self-promotion. And a leader doesn't betray the very foundation of the country he swore to protect. You didn't lead America, Donald. You drained her. You hollowed her out, piece by piece, until she was nothing but a reflection of your greed." The crowd exploded into chants again, "Denzel! Denzel!" The studio lights seemed hotter, harsher. Trump slammed his fist down and bellowed, "Fake news! Fake news!" But the audience drowned him out. Online, clips of the confrontation were already trending, commentators labeling it, "the moment Trump broke." It was no longer just a debate, it was a reckoning. Trump's face flushed red as the crowd roared, his attempts to shout over them only fueling the frenzy. He jabbed a finger toward Denzel. "You think you're some kind of moral authority? You're Hollywood, Denzel. Hollywood doesn't get to lecture me on America." His voice cracked, echoing across the studio. Denzel tilted his head slightly, his expression steady, almost pitying. "This isn't Hollywood, Donald. This is real life. And in real life, your name doesn't inspire pride, it inspires shame." The words hit like thunder. Gasps swept through the audience, and even the moderator froze. Trump slammed his hand on the podium. Lies. Total lies, he barked. But Denzel pressed on, his tone sharp as a blade. Your legacy isn't towers or deals or rallies. Your legacy is division. It's the scars left on this country. It's children who grew up believing that cruelty is strength because that's what you modeled for them. The audience erupted, some clapping, others murmuring in disbelief at the rawness of his words. Trump tried to retort, his voice trembling, I built success. I made America respected again. But Denzel leaned in closer, his voice rising, respected? You left allies doubting us. You left families torn apart. You left America more fragile than before. That's not respect. That's betrayal dressed in red, white, and blue. Cameras caught the split screen, Trump's jaw twitching, sweat glistening, eyes darting nervously, and Denzel, calm, focused, unyielding. Social media exploded as screenshots of that image became instant memes, shame versus strength. The studio was electric, chants shaking the rafters, tell the truth. Tell the truth. Denzel raised his voice above the chaos one final time, when history writes your name, Donald, it won't say leader. It won't say builder. It will say the man who failed America when she needed him most. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Trump's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For a man who always had a comeback, this silence was louder than any insult. The tension was now so thick it felt like the walls themselves were vibrating. Trump gripped the edges of his podium, leaning forward with fury. I gave jobs, I gave security, I gave America a future, he bellowed, his words spitting out in bursts of desperation. Denzel shook his head slowly, almost sadly, then raised his voice with precision, you didn't give, Donald. You took. You took trust and broke it. You took loyalty and twisted it. And worst of all, you sold out the very people who believed in you. The audience gasped, then fell silent, waiting for what came next. Trump's face was tight, his teeth grinding audibly. False. Absolutely false, he shouted, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Denzel's tone cut through the noise like steel. You cheated workers out of fair pay, bullied contractors into bankruptcy, and left communities in ruins just to pad your empire. And then, when you sat in the Oval Office, you used the same tactics on America. You didn't serve this country, you exploited it. The crowd erupted, half cheering wildly, half booing Trump's attempt to interject. The moderator raised a hand to calm them, but it was useless, the room had turned into a storm. Denzel pressed harder, you wrapped yourself in the flag while hollowing out the very values it stands for. You promised strength, but what you delivered was chaos. You promised greatness, but all you left was fear. That isn't leadership, Donald, it's betrayal with a smile and a slogan. Cameras zoomed in on Trump, his lips pressed tight, sweat rolling down his temple. His eyes darted between the moderator and the cameras, as if searching for an escape route. Meanwhile, Denzel stood tall, his presence commanding, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken millions. Social media lit up in real time, hashtags like hashtag #SoldOutAmerica and hashtag Denzel vs. Trump began trending instantly. Commentators were already calling it the most brutal dismantling of Trump on live TV. As the chants of Denzel echoed louder, Trump slammed both fists against the podium, his voice breaking, this is a witch hunt. A disgrace. But the roar of the crowd swallowed him whole. Trump's knuckles were white as he gripped the podium, the veins in his neck bulging. You don't know what it's like to lead a nation. You don't know the sacrifices I made. His voice cracked, a mix of anger and panic that only highlighted the unraveling facade. Denzel stepped forward, his voice steady but thunderous. Sacrifices? The only sacrifice you ever made was America's dignity for your profit. You used the presidency like a family business, contracts for friends, immunity for allies, and chaos for everyone else. The studio gasped, a wave of murmurs rippling through the audience. Trump tried to cut in, shouting, that's a lie. Fake news. But Denzel didn't flinch. He raised a hand, silencing even the cheers. You turned the Oval Office into your personal stage. Not for service, but for show. You didn't carry the weight of the office, Donald, you used the office to carry your weight. The crowd erupted, chants of "Truth! Truth!" shaking the rafters. Trump's face grew redder, his words tumbling over each other. I was strong. Stronger than anyone. The world feared me. Denzel leaned in, eyes locked on him like a spotlight. The world didn't fear you, Donald. They pitted us. Allies questioned us, enemies laughed at us, and ordinary Americans paid the price for your vanity projects. That's not fear. That's weakness painted red, white, and blue. The moderator struggled to regain control, but the stage had become a battlefield. Trump pounded the podium again, his shouts drowned out by the crowd. Phones lit up across the audience, capturing the historic clash. On Twitter, clips of Denzel's words were already trending under #VanityPresidency and #TruthOverTrump. News tickers across networks cut live updates. Denzel Washington dismantles Trump live on air. For a fleeting second, Trump's eyes dropped, his bravado flickering. But before he could gather himself, Denzel delivered the final blow of the round. History won't remember your slogans, Donald. It will remember the debts you left behind, to workers, to allies, and to America itself. The audience erupted into thunderous applause. Trump's fists trembled, but his words were gone. The studio was trembling with the roar of the audience. Every camera in the room was trained on the two men, capturing the sharp contrast, Trump, red-faced and shaking with fury. Denzel, calm yet unyielding, a steady fire in his eyes. Trump slammed his hand on the podium, his voice breaking through the noise. You don't speak for America. I made America strong again. Stronger than it's ever been. His words echoed, but they rang hollow, bouncing back from the walls like empty slogans. Denzel raised his hand, and instantly the room quieted. His voice carried a weight that demanded silence. Donald, he began, measured and cutting, strength isn't built on fear. It isn't built on bullying workers, cheating builders, or silencing truth. Strength is built on honesty, sacrifice, and respect for the people you serve. And you failed every single one of those tests. The crowd erupted into applause, some standing, others chanting his name. Trump's jaw clenched, his fists pounding the podium again. Lies. All lies, he shrieked, but his voice cracked under the pressure. Denzel stepped forward, his presence overwhelming. You didn't make America strong. You made America a spectacle. You didn't elevate the presidency. You degraded it. And history, whether you like it or not, will write your chapter as betrayal wrapped in red ties and golden towers. The moderator attempted to intervene, but the studio had already transformed into an arena. Trump's face twisted with rage, his words tumbling out incoherently. The audience, however, was no longer listening to him. Their eyes, their phones, their cheers were locked on Denzel. Clips of the exchange exploded online in seconds. Hashtags like #DenzelExposesTrump and #HistoryVersusTrump dominated every platform. Commentators on live feeds declared it a political earthquake. Finally, Denzel delivered his closing strike, his voice calm, deliberate, and unforgettable. America deserves leaders, not con men. And you, Donald, will never be remembered as a leader, only as a warning. The audience rose to its feet, the thunder of their applause shaking the stage. Trump froze, his mouth open but no words escaping. Cameras zoomed in on his stunned face as the chants of Denzel. Denzel filled the air, drowning him out completely. For millions watching at home, that moment was clear. Trump had lost, not just the argument, but the room, and perhaps, forever, the image of strength he so desperately clung to. Trump tried to shout, but tonight his voice was drowned out by truth. Denzel's words didn't just shake the studio, they echoed across America. This wasn't a debate. This was a reckoning. Remember, leaders rise by serving, frauds fall by deceiving. And history will always choose truth over lies.